If you're struggling with anxiety, trying a variety of different modalities, and yet still not getting the relief that you're after, then I invite you to listen in because today I want to share with you some really key points you need to look at to be able to get that relief that you're after. This video is for those who are experiencing anxiety, caring for loved ones with anxiety, and the coaches who are working beautifully with their clients. But there are definitely some key things you need to know to be able to, again, support those people to get that ultimate relief. Now, we often think of anxiety showing up when there's that really big deal event. There may be that confrontation, the loss of losing their job, the divorce, the argument. There might be that really big deal event. And we often bring our attention to that moment, assuming that that is what needs to be unpacked. In that trigger moment, where they often are seeking help, where that anxiety is right up at the surface, we need to acknowledge that the story of anxiety actually started a long time earlier. We need to understand that those earlier moments in childhood that shaped who you are, those coping strategies, the traits that you have on relationships and engaging with people, these are the things that we need to actually look at so that we can create that ripple effect of change instead of being stuck, going in circles and trying all different modalities. Now, in a non-anxious childhood, a family is meant to give a child that resilience, that self-worth, to know that you matter, you're seen, you're heard, you're valued, and so that you can hold your head high when you go out into the real world. These qualities, these traits, teach you who you are, who you're not, your name, your culture, your identity starts to get formed here so that there's that strong foundation in knowing exactly who you are, and therefore that can be carried throughout into the future. But when a child doesn't have that emotional security, when there's a lot of turbulence within the environment or chaos, they're in an environment of the unpredictability. Maybe their emotional needs are being dismissed. Maybe there's that parent that's disassociated in their own problems, so the child is picking up on the rejection, or they can't tune into somebody else to settle their own nervous system. And this is where a lot of the coping strategies start to form with somebody who is dealing with anxiety. We must remember that when somebody's got anxiety, it is the mind's very sophisticated way to protect somebody from a sense of powerlessness. So that child, where they were on their merry way, easygoing, and then there's all of this turbulence and chaos, there's now this unpredictability. Their unconscious mind learns that they can't just be on their merry way and playful and easy-go-lucky. Their system needs to anticipate the worst case scenario and to always be prepared. And so with this now being the absolute rule of how we navigate the world, this is where we start to see people really fearful of being rejected, the craving and the need to change who they are to keep the peace, because that instinct to survive is so, so strong. We need to remember that children can't escape these turbulent situations and they can't get their resources that are met from other people outside of the home. So they have to, again, adapt to really meet the parents' needs to be able to trust that they're going to be looked after. And there's this undercurrent that says I have to stay connected to the people who can't meet my emotional needs to be able to ensure my survival. So it is rarely just one big deal sort of childhood event. There's usually lots of subtle moments that are building up over time that are shaping this individual that they're not even aware of. And we know for ourselves, if it's just like one more little thing or just one more little thing, all these subtle layers, eventually there ends up being like that dark hole, the void within us that we don't even know is just building bigger and bigger. What we do know is that we need to be able to walk into a room, check how mum is, check how dad is, scan for all of the stress factors, and then change who I am as a child. to keep the peace. So this is huge. This is now where the child is looking and assessing, do I need to be quiet? Do I need to stay out of the way? Do I need to be busy or help? Is there a level of concern here? And with this means that this child is now actually building or corroding, you could say, their identity in the sense of they're looking outside of themselves for somebody else to tell me, who do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to have? So that things are easy and calm within the home. I will change who I am to keep the peace. Like, this is where that performance and the masking starts to be the strategy. And when you think about it, when it starts to erode their identity of who they are or erode their self-worth, when they're going out into the real world, they don't have that strong foundation of, that there's that backup, that there's that confidence, that there's that resilience. Instead, again, there are all these different strategies that is in place to avoid rejection, to be absent of who they are, to make sure that they're meeting the needs of everybody else. Now, the thing that you need to take notice of, especially when you're working with anxiety, it's not the fear that you're actually worried about. It's not the fear that the dad's going to be loud or the fear that mum's going to be, I don't know, drunk or in a mood or stressed or crying. We're not worried about that. We're actually going one step further and having a look at the consequences that if you are not pleasing and if you're not accommodating, what is that worst case scenario? That's the thing that needs the absolute focus on. And I know for myself within my own childhood that if I was not pleasing, giving, helping, serving mum, helping with the housework, the siblings, the everything else, that she had a suicidal tendency. And so the worst thing that could happen if I didn't do the thing was that she could be gone. And the consequences were huge because, again, as a child, I'm going to be alone. Who's going to help me get my needs met? And this is the thing that's actually playing out when somebody has anxiety. And it may not be as big as my childhood. It may be the person who has the parent that's pushing them to succeed on the football field, and there's a push and the fear of the consequences of not hitting the goal. Whatever it is, we actually look beyond the obvious and go to the consequences because this is the thing that's generating and keeping anxiety alive in the nervous system. Now, these coping skills, overgiving, pleasing, checking in, changing who you are as a child is so sophisticated. It's actually a really brilliant coping strategy. And we also have to consider that if this child didn't activate these types of strategies, what would have actually happened to them? They probably would end up just being a complete absent version of themselves. So the mind's ability to step forward, check what do I need to do to keep the peace? Okay, clean, cook, perform. Very, very clever. And we want to instill that within the client. That child version of you, wow, brilliant. But we also now know that as an adult, things definitely need to change. So when we, again, think about that person or that child who's had that kind of upbringing, they're constantly on alert for the worst case scenario, the triggers, the concerns. Their nervous system never gets to rest. And in fact, there's a big deal problem here because if you can't rest, how do you learn? How do you get confident? How do you feel good in your own skin? It's a recipe for disaster for long term, especially when we take that into adulthood, because that's when we start to see things like autoimmune issues, burnout, chronic fatigue, all the things. So keeping in mind when we're looking at anxiety, there's a performance within the component of anxiety. Who do you need me to be to make sure that I belong? And this is where, again, that mask, that performance is starting to become natural. When we take this into adulthood, this is where it shows up as people pleasing. So those very, very generous, overgiving people, especially the beautiful healers that I've coached and trained in NLP, is knowing that they will just give a little bit more time and, overgive. I'm definitely being one of those people. People who take these types of strategies into adulthood, they have the definite fear of getting it wrong, which then creates a level of procrastination because it's like, okay, tell me what do I need to do or perform or give to make sure that it's okay by you. And there's the procrastination because they don't have all the data. There's the fear of getting judged because if you're not doing it right, you're going to get it wrong. And then again, there's that the stress starts to generate. Again, I need to get it right. There's the difficulty starting things because there's been so much focus on the other person for the performance of, okay, well, who do you want me to be right now? And I know I keep saying that, but we really need to keep in mind that with anxiety, when we're raising the bar, raising our status to do whatever you want me to do, be whoever you want me to be, there is so much overthinking and analyzing and difficulty starting and difficult with direction and feeling stuck because you're actually dependent on the other person to get you started. It can look like this. It can look like those people who are struggling with performing or starting something. Again, who do you want me to be? The procrastination of like, what do you want me to do? And the perfecting, those who are saying us internally, what do you want me to have? Like, what do I need to be perfect on for you to accept me? And again, these are all really sophisticated survival strategies as a child. But this is definitely going to create issues, especially within your health, your relationships, feeling run down. So before that big deal event was the big obvious thing to work on, we need to recognize that before that big adult event, whether again, lost your job, divorce, questioning, should I get divorced, questioning, should I get a job, like all of the different things that are triggered, there's that big event. We also need to have that holistic picture that the person may or may not actually know what boundaries are. They're likely to be carrying a lot of heavy burden and that guilt that is weighing them down because, again, they're doing so much for everybody else. They're not feeling supported, that nobody really does have their back. So there's a reduction or inability to rest. And there's all of these roles that they've taken on that other people can take advantage of. And so with this, again, we look at that big event and we wonder, like, no wonder you ended up experiencing this big event when you didn't have the backbone and the support and the confidence to be able to know exactly where you stand, what you stand for, and who you are when you step forward in a relationship. When you haven't been speaking up and when you've been accommodating everybody else, they too don't know who you are. So this is where the system will finally buckle and you really will experience that amplification, big word, of all of the symptoms. So knowing that somebody who with anxiety, they're constantly scanning for the worst case scenario, they're anticipating problems, they're staying busy so that they can never really be caught out for being the target for somebody's aggro energy. They're staying busy. They're wanting to be in control of everything. This is where we see headaches, because if I can micromanage and control and be on top of everything and not ask or delegate, whew, then I don't have to worry about rejection. And then there's the avoiding, again, avoiding the relaxation, avoiding any problems, like they're on top of it. And there's that saying, right? Like, if you want something done, give it to a busy person because they'll be so ready to make things happen. With anxiety, relaxing feels risky. Being prepared or being in control is the one that feels safe. So somebody who's riddled with anxiety, telling them to meditate, hmm, aha, it's too much of a big jump. They need to be able to work through why are they hyper vigilant? What's constantly on the go for? What are they looking out for? When you can get the mind to stop scanning and searching, okay, I'm peaceful in this now moment. The childhood events are in the past. I do have autonomy, I do have a say. And keeping in mind, these people who have grown up without that guidance actually don't know how to now have boundaries. It's not something that's just going to automatically happen when you tell them to grow up and, you know, be in the real world. I often relate this back to like a fear of spiders. We can help somebody resolve the fear of spiders, but then when they actually see one in their bedroom, when the coach or counselor's not there, who has taught them the strategy to get the spider out of the room? Whether you're the glass kind of person or the vacuum person or the spray person, all they've known, all of their upbringing is that there's a spider and I run. So we need to keep in mind that just because we can resolve or help somebody know that those events are not happening now, they still need those strategies for success in this now moment. Now, I've probably gone ahead of myself here, but this is where multiple types of modalities, traditional counseling, coaching can miss the mark because they are focusing on the big event. They are focusing on the symptoms, the chest pains, the headaches, the sleepless nights. They can be focused on the behavior of somebody being hypervigilant and doing all of the things, and also focusing on the mindset of like, okay, face your fears and do it anyway, whatever the mindset thing is. What they're ignoring or what they're not considering is the identity and the coping strategies that actually let that person feel safe, that actually generated that moment where they didn't speak up. Bit of a mind bender, right? It's a bit of a mind bender. But we don't necessarily need to look at the event because it's been that slow burn up to that moment. The symptoms are most likely going to be chronic because again, there's just been this slow simmering burn up to this moment. Their behavior, that's their only strategy they know to be able to get the anxiety moving out of their system. And the mindset, yeah, that also needs to be helped when it comes to the strategy of how they do anxiety to be able to undo that strategy. And so, yes, you can't positive mindset your way out of a survival strategy. You can't just start when initiating once actually felt dangerous growing up when you told your mum that you'd like that particular ice cream. And now that she knows that, she's going to use it against you to get you to do more things. I'm not making this biographical here, but when you've had somebody, use the things that you want against you, clean your room and then you'll get the ice cream or do that thing and then you'll get what you want, people stop telling or even acknowledging what they want. It's because it's been used against them. When these people don't know how to set boundaries, that their whole body is riddled with guilt for saying no. It's because back in childhood, they weren't allowed to have boundaries. That was part of the power supply of the adult to be able to, yeah, override the boundaries. And if that child did get angry, oh, there's consequences here. And no, you can't mindset your way out of a survival strategy by just stop overthinking, because overthinking used to help you be safe. So it's not something that you're just going to put out with the trash. It's like, okay, the overthinking, the ruminating was something that used to work for you to say, okay, when mum's like this and she says that, or there's that tone, or they breathe that way, or they chew that way. Okay, what can I do instead? Again, all weird and wonderful, beautiful childhood coping strategies in a chaotic environment. We need to remember that anxiety is actually a protective strategy. And when you recognize that, then you can have a lot of respect for the symptoms and behaviors and things that are showing up for that person. Because anxiety also didn't just protect you, it also sharpened you. And let me share with you what I'm talking about. That hypervigilance, that awareness of scanning the room, what do people need? Oh, that skill right now to read a room is very heightened. That sense of picking up tension early before it builds, the anticipation of problems, understanding people's motives, being able to empathize with those who've experienced that type of bully scenario, and noticing what other people miss, and also the ability to adapt quickly, and also your intuition. Now, all of these things that are acute within you, if you've got anxiety, these are some of the coping strategies that we actually want to acknowledge. But here's the thing, I get really excited about this one. If somebody has scans the room and then adjusts to keep their peace, they pick up on the tension, they're understanding people, their intuition is sharp as a tack, then we also know that if you don't have the anxiety there, can we actually hold on to these strengths without needing the anxiety to activate them? So I have heard from clients in the past where they've got that charge of energy, like their mother has phoned them or something. They've had their buttons pushed, and now they're in that creative kind of space where they can create beautiful pieces of artwork or writing because there's been that charge, there's been that activation. And instead, how about you just create the beautiful pieces of art, tap into your intuition, have that creative flow without the anxiety being the very first step. Something to consider if you're familiar with NLP and strategy elicitation is like, yeah, let's just drop out the first part of the strategy being triggered, and now let's just go on with the things that actually make you so brilliant. So yes, you can have that awareness of what do people need and how can I be accommodating without that hypervigilance, and also having those boundaries. You can have that empathy and the intuition without that self-abandonment. You can also have that intuition and that connection to people's spirit without the fear of needing to prove that you're valuable and that you've got that insight for them so they stay closer. And you've also got those observation skills without the need to overthink, what does this mean? You already know. So keeping in mind, healing means letting go of the fearful part, all of the worry about the consequences, the worry about not belonging, the worry about getting it wrong, the worry about getting rejected. Here's the thing, and one of my beautiful mentors told me this: healing also means stop trying to fit in. For somebody who's got anxiety and they're putting on a bit of a performance, again, to keep the peace, to be what you want me to be, like an actor on stage. When you walk in a room and you stop with this automatic need to just fit in and like start to be okay with just you, yeah, wow, it's like there's quietness in your head, and you finally just enter your body and it's like, oh, here I am. It's a brilliant experience if you want to play with that one. But healing means to be able to resolve and dissolve all of the limitations, the fear, the consequences, the roles, everything else, the roles that you played to keep yourself safe, the fears that you've been carrying, the strategies you've been doing to protect yourself or to be anticipating the problem. This is what we would look at in coaching, especially if somebody's got anxiety or a chronic health concern. We want to look at what are the old rules that you've been abiding by that used to get you approval, but now just keep you tangled in this resentful type of relationship. What I'm thinking of here is like if you've had that rule of being seen and not heard, and now we say in a grown-up relationship that you're still operating by this, seen and not heard, then of course you're not going to speak up about your needs because that would go against the old rule. The rules haven't been updated, so it's like still operating by good manners that was childhood you. To be able to resolve that anxiety, and I see this a lot with people who have narcissistic mothers, we need to let go of the fear, whatever fear that's been instilled in you that's not real or realistic anymore, because fear is one of the quickest things to drain your battery, to keep you in that adrenal fatigue. The fear, I've seen this before with clients with burnout. You resolve the fear and they get their energy and the brain fog disappears. It's awesome. Clear away the old guilt, the guilt of saying no, the guilt of putting yourself first, the guilt of needing what you need and not worrying that you're taking away from the family, the family container. It's like, no, there isn't any guilt here. My needs are, are needing to be considered. And also resolving and dissolving any of the old patterns that, again, that you've outdated. If these are still running the show, no wonder there's the anxiety, there's the fear of the security with like losing a job or getting a divorce or whatever it is that you're up against, because there's so much dependency on needing the other person for you to be able to operate this old strategy. So yes, when we work through all of those fears, the guilt, the rules, everything that once got you approval, healing now looks like this sense of freedom and ease, because the grip of anxiety is not pulling you into worst case scenario. It's more about holding your head high, knowing that no matter what life can throw at you, you have the strategy and the skills to be able to deal with it. I often tell people when they're striving for confidence, confidence actually means with trust. Confidence is with trust. So it's not giving you certainty. Confidence means that there's trust in yourself, that you have the coping skills, the strategies to be able to do what you need to when life throws you curveballs. And so, yes, aim for the confidence. Know that confidence doesn't necessarily make life easy. It just makes it easier when there's those scenarios that your buttons get pushed and it's like, actually, do I want to engage with this anymore? Like that whole, is it worth my time, worth my energy? Do I need to be fitting in this scenario? Probably not. So this is where we start to go back to your original needs, to reclaim the original needs of that child, that beautiful innocence of to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be validated that you are the amazing you, and that whatever steps forward, however you want to be, will be accepted. And if they're not, then it's like, okay, this is not the room for me. So again, if you're struggling with anxiety, then the key point here is to actually go look at some of the old outdated roles that keep you in that survival mechanism, or that mechanism going in circles, to resolve the fear of the consequences, to go and work through the burden and the guilt and the people pleasing, so that you can be this new version of yourself, to be seen, be heard, be valued, and be the amazing you. I'm Claire Chancellor, and if you want more resources on this topic, I have plenty on my website freely available, because that's part of my purpose, is to be able to help people be their purpose. I'm Claire Chancellor, and I'll talk to you later.